Hi, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate demo for my MerMay2021 piece. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. MerMay2021, just now getting around to it. That just shows, that dates exactly how behind everything I am. But again, trying to really catch up to a week, see what we can do. I think we'll be able to get to MerMay 2022 very soon. So as you may know, MerMay is an event that happens every year on the internet where a bunch of artists try to draw a mermaid a day for the month of May. I personally don't have that many mermaids in me, and I don't have the time to do that. I really wish I did. So instead, I just kind of do one every year. And by every year, I mean starting in 2021. I really didn't even start until this piece right here. So let's get right into all of this ideation. You could see that I had a form I wanted right away. I wanted to go for this thing where the tail was really big. Originally, you can see with the structure here, I wanted it to be more vertical. I kind of wanted the fish tail to be more stiff, but then after getting some feedback from some friends when I shared it to them, they were like, actually getting some more play in there would be more interesting. So you'll see that adjustment take place eventually. For right now, though, let's just get these tight shots. Oh, I say tight shot and then we back out. Here's the whole tail, just to kind of show like the adjustments that I start making to the tail. For the part that's kind of like the woman part of the mermaid, I'm just trying to focus on like some fun shapes, trying to drive a lot of character, trying to set like a mood. Is she doing something specific? Is she just swimming, or is she actually maybe performing some sort of a dance or some sort of a thing? Who knows? I started thinking about these elements at this point, like what is my version of a mermaid? That's why you get this like patterning on the arms, and you get the necklace, and I'm doing something interesting with the ear here. And this is just me trying to decide, like, if I'm going to do a mermaid, like, what's my mermaid? And I think that there's a lot of fun in mermaid because you can either straight up just lean into classic interpretations of mermaids. You could do something really crazy. Some people do really crazy things. Oh, here you can see me using the warp tool. This is when somebody said, just get some more play in the tail. And so I cut the tail, did a bunch of warping, scooted some things around, and then it was like, oh, cool, now I've got it. And doing this at the rough sketch phase is really nice because I got to go through and do tight lines anyways, so I can clean all that up in the tight lines. And here's where we get into those tighter lines. So I use a pencil that I created called the Fat Pencil. It's in my brush down below, my brush set down in the description below. But I use it for the rough and I use it for the tight, and it's just a matter of sizing it up or sizing it down and sort of how I end up treating it. Here you can see I'm building my lines a little bit. This isn't something where it's just like a one-off on each line, although it is on some aspects. It's not the majority of it. There's a lot of line building happening here. And I'm trying to accent these really core curves to her figure so that I can really try to push the simplicity there and then have the complexity on the opposite side of those curves. And that's where we can get some of the anatomy brought back in, even though she's extremely stylized in general. Sometimes I think it's easy to think of a mermaid as two distinct halves, but what I was trying to do, but not in like an overly merged way, was think of the tail and the body part as all one continuous figure, just not just in the movement but also in terms of some of the patterning. Like, what am I going to do with my version of a mermaid? Are they going to have like this patterning carry all through the body and the tail? Is it going to be the same color when it does that? Is she going to have something that's really specific on the tail, something that's really specific on the upper body? So I end up going with this sort of like wavy kind of almost like a seashell patterning on her, and then I like bring that all the way down. That's just in the line drawing though. I eventually have to figure out what's that going to do when I get to color. Here's her necklace. So I do a new mermaid piece for 2022 where I try to continue this series and I try to bring in some of the same elements again. And one of the things that I later bring in that I developed here for this illustration is this necklace, and trying to give it some sort of a distinct look where it feels like it could be created by like an underwater species, but it's not, but it still has its like distinction to it. Like, you can really tell what it is. I wanted to eventually weave in things like shells, but not just have it be like a string with shells. Like, it looks almost like there's a little bit more purpose to it. And I thought that a great contrast to a character who's got like this almost like salmon colored fishtail, like she's very like earth tones throughout, she's very naturalistic, was to go with like gold and then some of these like brighter colors. I just thought it would be like a really cool look for her, and it would maybe even communicate one of two things. Either gold is a super common thing for them, and so they have a bunch of it, or she's not just an average mermaid, she is maybe a little bit more important than that, and that's why she has some of these adornments. So this is all just stuff that I'm trying to think about. It's not like I'm trying to build a new mermaid movie or something like that, but I try to think about the story behind these things as I'm working on them. And then you can see here, I bring in a little bit of this light gold. It's not like a shiny gold. It's like hints of gold into this patterning. And it kind of starts bringing it all together a little bit. One thing when I'm doing digital watercolors is I try to deliberately bring in like errors to the watercolor paint. I remember saying this in some past video, and some douchebag was like, yeah, well, if you're really good at it, there's no errors. Like, whatever, get the fuck out of here. Like, the point is that watercolor, when you're using it in real life, there's the opportunity for you to do something with the lines where it will maybe make the lines bleed a little bit, or you'll do something with the brush where you get like a little bit of a stray mark, and you can clean that up, of course. But like, watercolor usually gets a lot of its character from these more like watery, loose elements, as well as like the texture of the paper and the sort of multi-layer of the paint, where you can see some like dips in the paint where it's not coated as much. There are, of course, people out there that do insane watercolor pieces that are highly precise, but that's not what the average person thinks about. So I try to lean into what the average person thinks about with these things. So you can see we've got some colors now thrown in here. You could also see that I laid them all down like really, I just kind of all over, and then went back and erased. And that's because a watercolor brush for me should be a little wild. And in real life watercolors, you have a lot more control over the tip of the paintbrush that you just don't have in digital. And so I do that by just effectively like masking it out, or treating it like I will eventually mask it out. You can see, by the way, I didn't even talk about it, the necklace there. I made the necklace particularly high contrast to really sell those materials, added in the bright colors for the shells. And now I'm putting in some bubbles. Just, they wouldn't really have a color because bubbles are clear, but we're working on a white background, so we want something to just drive some mass there, as well as some depth. By adding those double layers there, you can get that overlap, and then it makes the bubbles feel like they have a little more substance to them than just being perfectly clear. You can see I'm also going in with the pencil again with just pure white. I've got this paper set at just a little dimmer than white, and now I can go in this pure white and add these little rim lights and highlights and stuff on the bubbles to try and really sell that material further. Keeping it simple though, I'm not trying to get too like overly rendered or too accurate with this. Just a rim light and a highlight, and a rim light and a highlight, and going through every one of those bubbles to make sure that they're consistently treated in the same way. One thing that you'll notice that's really subtle here, though, because her eyes are almost closed, is she also has golden eyes. In the piece that I did this year, which I'll eventually get to here, I actually take that further and just have a character with full open eyes. You can see that they have golden eyes. So we've got this like recurring golden theme throughout their patterning, their jewelry, and their eye color. Again, not trying to massively world build here, just trying to create some sort of consistency and maybe have the viewer ask a couple questions about why things might be the way they are. So I'm continuing with the highlights and rim lights. Then we go in and add a little bit of really subtle texture to just try and sell the fishtail aspect of her, and some little highlights on her skin just in a couple of places to give it just a little bit more visual interest. So there's the fish sort of like texture kind of, and then you can see she's got like a little shine on her cheek and a couple of other little areas. Adjusting some of the value of that circle behind her, which I think I just slightly saturated and lowered its opacity a little bit more. And then we're putting a rim light in on her, although we're keeping it light. We're sort of still continuing to play with these semi-translucent materials, I guess you could say, media, like in watercolor. But I just wanted to do that to give her like a little bit more dimension, even though we're not going into shadows. That's something that I should point out here, is there's no shadow work across this entire thing. Then we put just a little bit of splatter in there just to add a little more interest. Play with the values and the levels a little, just to make sure that she's got the right pop and the right punch. And this is the final piece right here. Me selling digital watercolor is all about the way the brush reacts and kind of mimics the watercolor, but then it's also about some of the methodologies you either employ or limit yourself to. And then lastly, kind of leveraging a good watercolor paper texture for the background can really sell this. As I said, there's lots of different types of watercolor out there. This isn't the only thing, but to me, it sort of sells what most people think about. And lastly, it's a simple piece, but I try to think about some of the world building and some of the systems that I'm setting up with regards to her character design. I did not necessarily anticipate doing another one in the next year, but if I ever knew that I was going to do another one, I thought it would be kind of nice to have some sort of consistency and something that was thought out. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video about my MerMay piece from 2021. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please hit like, subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.